The Committee on House Regulatory Reform will now come to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chair Carter,
Here.
Representatives Liberati,
Here.
Neely,
Here.
Scott,
Present.
Young,
Here.
Grant,
Here.
McFall,
Here.
Snyder,
Here.
Wilson,
Here.
Mueller,
Here.
Miller,
Yes.
Wenzel,
Here.
Aragona,
Here.
Beerline,
Here.
Nair.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Representative Liberati moves to adopt the minutes from the March 5th, 2024 meeting. Seeing no objections, the minutes are adopted. Today, we'll take up House Bills 5527 and 5528, which we heard testimony on last week from Representative Fitzgerald and myself. And Representative Fitzgerald is going to come up and give us some more information.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to come back here today to give a brief overview of the changes to House Bill 5527, the H2 substitute, and the small change to House Bill 5528, which is an H1, which is also before you. We work closely with the American Heart Association, the Michigan Association of School Boards, and the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals to ensure that schools are more comfortable with the implementation while also maintaining the core purpose of the legislation. These changes include the following. We added a sunset to subsection 12 to avoid the technical issue of having a gap from when that section would have to be repealed, and the new emergency plan requirement goes into effect in the 25-26 school year. We did clarify that schools only need to prepare one cardiac emergency response plan, which must include implementation at athletic events if applicable. We did change the regular review of the cardiac emergency plans to a triennial review, aligning with other schools that already have these reviews going on, so that's every 3 years. We did also the exercise simulations to practice the cardiac emergency plan that still occur annually, but must include the participation of the emergency response team members. So we're really kind of just, again, defining what an exercise simulation must be. The definition of sudden cardiac arrest was slightly revised per the request of the Heart Association. And finally, there were concerns and questions about that 1 to 3 minute time frame that was really kind of how do you measure distance versus time. So through discussion with stakeholders and looking to what other states have implemented, we reworked that AED placement to focus on accessibility and retrievability. So the sub requires that AEDs would be easily retrievable and not locked away in an office or otherwise out of access to all individuals at the school, and requires clear identifying signage near the AEDs. The 1 to 3 minute standard is recommended to the extent possible by the schools, but is not mandatory. If you'll notice here, even in the elevator bay, on the short side elevator here, only going up to 5th floor, there is an AED there, which I think would provide ample representation of what we are seeking. It's visible, it's well marked, and it is accessible. That is all for 5527 in the H2 before you. In the H1 to 5528, there was one small change to clarify that coaches must not just obtain, but rather must maintain the CPR certification and AED training required by the bill. So these changes, again, were made in conjunction with the stakeholder groups I mentioned before. This is going to really help the schools to implement these laws. And again, I think that based on the testimony last week, we can see that there is a true human impact to this legislation before you today, and I appreciate your consideration. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Well, thank you for your overview. Are there any questions? Colleagues? No. So, supporting the bill, not wishing to speak, but with MDHHS edits, is the Michigan Department, Dr. Cheryl Kennedy with the Michigan Department of Education. Next, I'll take a motion to adopt the H2 substitute for House Bill 5527. Representative Neely makes the motion to adopt the H2 substitute. Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Chair Carter,
Yes.
Representatives Liberati,
Yes.
Neely,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
McFall,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Filler,
Yes.
Wenzel,
Yes.
Aragona,
Yes.
Beerline,
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, substitute H2 is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll take a motion to report House Bill 5527 with recommendation as substitute H2. Representative Young makes the motion. Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Chair Carter,
Yes.
Representatives Liberati,
Yes.
Neely,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
McFall,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Filler,
Yes.
Wenzel,
Yes.
Aragona,
Yes.
Beerline,
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. House Bill 5528 is reported as substitute H2.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll take a motion to adopt H1 sub for House Bill 5528. Representative McFall makes the motion to adopt H1 substitute. Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Chair Carter,
Yes.
Representatives Liberati,
Yes.
Neely,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
McFall,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Filler,
Yes.
Wenzel,
Yes.
Aragona,
Yes.
Beerline,
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, substitute H1 is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next, I'll now take a motion to report House Bill 5528 with recommendations as substitute H1. Representative Grant makes the motion. Madam Clerk, would you please call the vote?
Chair Carter,
Yes.
Representatives Liberati,
Yes.
Neely,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
McFall,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Filler,
Yes.
Wenzel,
Yes.
Aragona,
Yes.
Beerline,
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. House Bill 5528 is reported with recommendation as substitute H1.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And to my colleagues, I want to say thank you for supporting this. As we go through March Reading Month, I was in a few schools yesterday, and I did notice that they all had AEDs, and they're being maintained, probably by the same people that maintain the fire extinguisher. So I appreciate the support. Next, we'll take up House Bill 5529, which we heard testimony on last week. Are there any questions from committee members? I'll take a motion to report House Bill 55. I will take a motion to report House Bill 5529 with recommendations. Representative Filler makes the motion. Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Carter,
Yes.
Representatives Liberati,
Yes.
Neely,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
McFall,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Wenzel,
Yes.
Aragona,
Yes.
Beerline,
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. House Bill 5529 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next, we will now take up House Bill 5421 with Representative Rogers. We'll be given an overview of the bills. Whenever you're ready.
Did the clerk receive my PowerPoint or no? Awesome. Chair Carter and members of the Committee on Regulatory Reform, thank you for hearing testimony today on my bill, HB 5421. It is a very simple concept. Clarify Michigan's bottle deposit law to specify the hours a store must accept returnable bottles and cans for deposit redemption. My bill specifies that retailers required to accept bottle deposit returns do so at a minimum between the hours of 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. if they are open and operating, or during the hours they are open between those times if they operate during a shorter window. For example, if a store is open between the hours of 9 and 5, then they would be required to accept bottle and can returns between those hours, nothing more and nothing less. Michigan's historic bottle deposit law has prevented many bottles and cans from becoming litter, reduced their number in landfills, and encouraged recycling since its inception in 1976. Retailers have played an important role in the success of the bottle deposit law as they interface between consumers with empty bottles and cans and refunding the deposits consumers placed on the containers. While the vast majority of retailers have embraced this partnership and work to make returns convenient for consumers, some retailers, particularly those serving our economically disadvantaged communities, have not lived up to their responsibility to support deposit returns. Currently, there is no minimum time period that a retailer must accept bottle deposit returns, which has led to some retailers making deposit return services available infrequently and for very short periods of time. Several residents in my district brought this issue to my attention, and I have recently personally visited stores in my district while attempting to return bottles and cans of my own. Many stores are operating in good faith, and I had no issue, but some are severely restricting the days of the week and the hours that they will accept returnables. In fact, I just tried to return 48 cans, the equivalent of 2 24-packs of soda, which should not be an unreasonable quantity. It was a Sunday. One store staff said, "We don't accept on Sundays." And when I asked if I could come back tomorrow with my cans, the manager said, "Yes, but only between 9 and 2. One store said, "Our machine is broken, come back later." Incidentally, the machine has reportedly been down for months, according to some local residents I asked in the store's parking lot. One store had a sign that read $2 limit, no cash back, no bottle return on Wednesdays, 9 to 6 p.m., which you can see on the slide. One store said, "We only accept $2 worth." I asked a clarifying question if that meant they would only take 20 cans, and they said, "Yes, 20 cans per day." And I said, "So I can go over there and buy your 2 24-packs, drink the soda in the parking lot, and bring those very soda cans back, and you will refuse to accept my return?" The manager said yes. These restrictions are all significant. For working people, one would need a spreadsheet to navigate the individual store's self-designated rules. And I had a car. When are people with limited transportation options supposed to do? Or busy working families with small children? Or elderly with mobility issues? To be clear, all these stores would willingly sell me the soda, but many would not take back those very same cans. I introduced this bill to even the playing field amongst the stores. A few are taking advantage of this loophole in the law on the backs of our residents. And to me, it's about fairness. Again, thank you, Chair Carter, for taking up testimony on House Bill 5421. Joining me in testimony is also Tom Emmerich from Chupin and Kalamazoo and Nick Crossbein from UBCR, as well as Susan Collins with Container Recycling Institute on Zoom. I'm available now or at the end for questions.
We'll take questions now, or do you want to wait, Rep. Snyder? You can go now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Rep. Rogers. I guess my initial question is, while I have experienced some of the same things that you talked about in your testimony during, more so during the pandemic than during current times, the bill that is in front of us, unless I'm missing something, does not include any type of enforcement mechanism for what you're proposing for the hours. Can you speak to that?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So this is a first step. In my conversations with residents who have tried to file complaints, people have pointed out that the law is gray. And so this would be the first step, is clarifying the hours, because right now the law that's on the books when we passed it through the voter-initiated ballot, it does not specify how or when. It just says if you sell cans and bottles, you must take back said cans and bottles, but it doesn't say how or when. So this would be the first step in looking at that, and I think we'll have to try to clarify enforcement as well, but I would presume it's with the Attorney General's office.
So thank you for that. I would just, and it does require a 3/4 vote because it's amending the bottle bill.
Thank you for pointing that out.
So I would, I think without an enforcement mechanism, I do have concerns about what that means moving forward.
Thank you, Representative Snyder. Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair, for being here today. We talked about this. I did ask you about perhaps considering like 30 minutes before closing, because we know if somebody shows up with $25 worth of bottles, you can be there well after closing trying to process those. So that was just something. I don't know if you're still considering it, but I wanted you to know that was something that I was thinking about. And then, let's see, how about, so have you, working within the industry and stakeholders, was there conversation when the machines are broken to not send people away, but to hand count before there were machines? There weren't always machines. They used to count the cans and the bottles. And I'm just curious if you thought about including something like that as well. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you for bringing those topics up. I have had some conversations with various retailers, and it's really a range. Some have an appetite to do that, and some do not. I also did not include a picture of one of the stores in my district that had their machine kind of blocked up by a whole bunch of boxes and equipment, and they claimed that they could not take in cans and bottles because their machine was down. Again, speaking with residents, that same machine's been down for months.
Representative Bierland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there any mechanism, so with smaller stores, a lot of them don't like to take back cans because they have a hard time getting them out of their store. So is there a mechanism to force the distributors to pick those cans up in a timely manner?
We have some industry experts that are going to testify to that point, so I would defer to them.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real quick, I want to say, seeing all your signs in your presentation gave me a little PTSD because I get tired of seeing those little signs, and I have a lot of constituents that have the same concern. So I'm glad you took this bill up. And the one only issue I was going to mention is what Rep. Young talked about, closing time and scaling it back just slightly. So I just wanted to make that comment, and thank you for this bill.
Representative McFall.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. And thank you for being here with this bill. The question I have is about the machines legitimately being down. And if they were to hand count them, like where would they store them? Because I know that that's one of the functions of the machine is that it compresses. And I know like the grocery store by my house, the machines do get clogged up and they are sometimes functioning and sometimes not. But what I would be concerned with would be the sanitary aspect of having to hand count them and then also to store them if that was the case.
Yeah, and again, I think we have some industry experts that are going to speak to the process and how cans and bottles are regularly picked up and how some of the larger stores are handling this with no issue. So thank you for the question.
So I want to thank everybody. This is a real concern in the Detroit area, in my district, where stores will sell you product, but they will not take them back. And they have a variety of reasons. And it started with COVID, but now we've ballooned to a ridiculous amount of folks that will not take them back. And I understand personnel issues, because once you get technology, it kind of, you move away from actual human contact. But we've got to figure out a way, because what they're doing is overloading the bigger stores and causing damage to their machines. So I appreciate you bringing this. I know that it's a big deal. I got a bunch of cans in my garage right now. So with that, we are going to go at ease.
Committee will now come to order. Now we have Tom Emmerich and with Schupan and Sons Incorporated speak in support of the bill.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you all today. My name is Tom Emmerich. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Schupan and Sons, Inc. I've also, I guess by title for UBCR as co-manager, and maybe we can explain if you have any questions what that actually means. But I represent Schupan and Sons and UBCR. Schupan is a 56-year-old family-owned Michigan company located in Kalamazoo. UBCR is jointly owned by Schupan and Tomer North America and is the industry's premier pickup agent. We handle approximately 75% of Michigan's deposit containers. We have extensive experience and knowledge related to the state's extremely popular bottle return system. I have personally worked directly, I'm afraid to say this, I have personally worked directly in Michigan's beverage and deposit system for over 37 years as a service provider, picking up, processing, and/or marketing Michigan's deposit containers. As a strong proponent of our current beverage container deposit law and system, I believe I could share valuable insight as to why House Bill 5421 would assist in enhancing the current system. It is important to point out a couple of facts as related to the state, to Michigan's return rate. One, the Michigan Deposit Program pickup and processing services are run by and paid for by the soft drink and beer distributors. Distributors are responsible for initiating the deposit and working with retailers and recyclers to ensure the deposit containers are efficiently and properly managed and recycled. Michigan has long been considered the most efficient deposit system in the country until recently, due to the consumer convenience of the system being 100% returned to retail and the continuous improvement initiatives by the distributors and all stakeholders. The return rate for deposit, and that includes retailers. The return rate for deposit containers in the state of Michigan has consistently been greater than or near 90% prior to the pandemic. The State Treasury Department has reported the return rate has declined to around 75% for the years 2020, 2021, and 2022. Our preliminary data suggests that 2023 return rates will be very similar. As a service provider, our processing and handling volumes are consistent with the declining return rates, with a more significant decline coming from smaller retailers, on-premise dealers, recreational sports venues, etc. Our deposit system has succeeded over the years by the industry coming together, distributors, retailers, and recyclers, to continuously improve the process. Integrity, efficient logistics and operations, and quality of data collection is of the utmost importance to the program's viability. Consumer convenience is extremely important to bottle redemption, and House Bill 5421 would further clarify the law with detailed hours of operation at all retailers, adding to the integrity of the system. This will create consistency across all redemption locations and make refunds available to consumers doing the right thing by taking their deposit containers back to their local retailers. I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts, and I'm more than happy to take any questions you may have.
I just have one question. If a store is not abiding by the law, who does the customer call?
We're a service provider, so they're not going to call us. They might, but what we have been instructed to do is have them notify the state's attorney general office if a store is not abiding by the state law.
Thank you. You wish to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that UBCR is a company contracted by Michigan Soft Drink Association and Michigan Beer and Wine Wholesalers to service the larger retailers in the state of Michigan. We pick up 75% of the deposit containers, over 2 billion containers every year. And we're in support of this bill as it's simple for consumers to understand their rights of hours of operation for bottle returns. So.
Thank you. Representative Bierman?
Thank you. I wondered if you might be able to help me with my question from earlier. I know we have a member serving in this body who used to own a store, so this was always an issue. Small store, by the time the truck gets to him, it's full, and then he has to find ways to store stinky, wet, gross cans because he doesn't have a machine and it's hand count.
As far as that question, I know the soft drink and beer and wine distributors are supposed to be picking those up, and I know there's some members in the audience that could probably answer that question better than me. They're members.
Well, I might add interestingly, clearly, there's no such thing as a perfect piece of legislation, and every system's going to have some flaws in it. We implemented a business 20 years ago, UBCR LLC, that picks up over 75% of all the deposit containers in the state of Michigan now. So yes, there are could be issues at smaller stores with their local distributor. We can't impact that all that well, but I can say that if you look at the numbers and the return rates, and where it appears that the volumes has dropped off in the return system, tends to be in those smaller venues. We didn't have that many issues prior to the pandemic. So something I believe has happened during the system shutdown, where we are 100%. We are 100% return to retail state, and we're the only state in the country that has that type of system. So something I believe happened during the shutdown and coming out of it that has changed some behavior. And certainly there's some labor issues and things like that. But if we're picking up over 75% of the containers, that's even fewer containers that smaller stores are dealing with. It may not be a perfect answer, and I can't speak to that individual situation, but.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Susan Collins with the Container Recycling Institute, wishing to speak in support on Zoom.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Susan Collins. I'm the president of the Container Recycling Institute. We are in support of House Bill 5421, which would require dealers to have mandated hours of operation to provide convenient means of beverage container returns by consumers. I'm testifying today to provide more statistics and a national perspective. Prior to 2020, Michigan's beverage container redemption rate was the highest of the 10 states in the U.S. that have such programs. Michigan's redemption rate had been above 90% for more than 27 years. In the last few years, the lack of participation in the program by some retailers has created a lack of consumer convenience and consumer participation in the state of Michigan. And as has been mentioned by others, this creates an unlevel playing field for retailers. Michigan is the only state with a deposit return system that solely uses return to retail with no redemption centers. And Michigan, as you've heard, also suffered the largest redemption rate drop in the country from 2019 to 2020, a 16-point drop in its redemption rate from 89% in 2019 to 73% in 2020. This was as a result of the COVID shutdowns. In June 2021, the Michigan Department of Treasury issued a reminder to retailers with bottle return facilities of the requirement to take back beverage containers, suggesting concern over compliance. Despite these encouragements, Michigan has not recovered to pre-pandemic redemption rates. The state's redemption rate has recovered slightly to 76% in 2022. In contrast, Oregon, the only other state with a 10-cent deposit for all of its containers, has had the largest recovery in its redemption rate since 2020, bouncing back from 77% in 2020 to 86% in 2022. Our letter of testimony shows this in a graph. Oregon has now overtaken Michigan as the redemption rate leader in the United States. Requiring retailers to accept containers during normal hours of operation is a straightforward way to increase consumer convenience. CRI further suggests adding mechanisms to monitor and enforce the DRS program, as other states have done. For example, in Oregon, retailer compliance is routinely monitored by the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission inspectors. New York State is also seeking more routine enforcement and recently established a statewide multi-agency task force to help prevent fraud within the system. Connecticut passed legislation in 2021 that required more retailers to install reverse vending machines and establish grant funding to build new redemption centers. Lastly, California passed new legislation in 2022 and is developing regulations that will modernize all requirements related to dealer take-back, along with more stringent financial penalty amounts. In sum, we are in support of this legislation, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
I don't see any questions. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next up, in support of the bill, wishing to speak, Jerry Griffin from Midwest Independent Retailers.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. Quick fix there. We're actually in opposition to the legislation. I just want to clarify that right up the front. Good morning. My name is Jerry Griffin. I'm the VP of Government Affairs for the Midwest Independent Retailers Association. I appreciate the time to speak to you today. MIRA is an organization representing small business, family-owned operations in the food and beverage supply chain industry. I do, as I stated, have to come up to express our opposition to House Bill 5421. The vast majority of our members are small business owners whose stores do not have reverse vending machines, and which requires the employees to hand count filthy, unhygienic returnables while other customers wait in line, and so it's an inconvenience to those customers as well. Our members, most of who do not place restrictions on when returns will be accepted, must manage labor resources, and those members have a better understanding of when the need exists to have more employees or less during certain operating hours. The mandate created in House Bill 5421 is bad for business, as it would require MIRA's members to schedule additional employees during periods that they have determined that the labor needs are less. And I would state, as we've talked about reverse vending machines, they do break down regularly. Some of our members certainly do have them. They are expensive to fix, but a good number of our members do not have them. And my family owned a party store when I was growing up, and I had to hand count these things. And if you've ever had the pleasure of handling that task, in fact, we are looking at having members come into our stores over the summertime when you guys won't be so busy. And we would invite you into your district to come into our stores. And I doubt any of you are going to want to handle that particular task, but if you're welcome to work in the bottle and can sorting and counting portion of, or what our members have to do as part of the function of operating their stores. Now, we understand the motivation behind the bill is to create convenience as much as possible for consumers. We hope that desire to make the process convenient applies to retailers as well. I think in making the convenience argument, we have to acknowledge, and part of the reason the redemption rates are dropping, and have been dropping since 2010, actually, not since just the COVID pandemic, is that consumers, if they come into one store and, for instance, they don't handle that brand and they don't handle that returnable, they are not going to go to a second store. They're probably going to throw it away. And I think that speaks to the fatigue that people in general have with bringing returnables back, these filthy, unhygienic returnables back to a store where they're handled by people who are putting out food and they're there to shop for food. The greatest convenience I think we can give to any consumer is to make a one-stop returnable or recyclable system where we don't have to return these items at all. The bottle bill was a great piece of legislation for its time. We had garbage strewn by the side of the road. But as we've heard from Shupan and our friends in the recycling industry, we now have a mature recycling industry where these cans can be separate, or these returnables can be put into that system as they handle all the other myriad of products that don't go back for deposit. In operating these two parallel recycling programs, it's inefficient, it's expensive, and in our view, the best way to make this convenient for consumers in general is to make all recyclable materials enter into one system. And this is best accomplished by repealing the bottle bill altogether. Considering these issues, we would urge your opposition to House Bill 5421 and direct your attention to the broader issues attached to this policy question. And I would state, as it relates to the repealing of the bottle bill, I know that seems an anathema to a lot of people. It has been around a long time. But I do think there is a lot of fatigue out there. I think you can just look at the redemption rates. Again, they have been dropping and dropping and dropping. They have not recovered, even though we're out of the pandemic. And to suggest that that's only because a handful of small business retailers are limiting hours for people to bring things back, I think is ignoring a larger question at hand. We have a report that was generated by the public sector consultants for our organization back in the mid-2013, I believe it was, that speaks to this very issue. I will forward it to the members of the committee for your review as it speaks to their recommendation. The bottle bill, great for its time, needs review and is frankly outdated. And I think if we move to a single system recycling system, our friends at Shupan would see their business even go up. So I appreciate your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Representative McFall.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if you can answer this or not, or if maybe someone else can. I just thought of it when you were talking. About the fatigue. And I'm just wondering if part of that fatigue is actually people having their groceries delivered, where they're not actually going back to the store. So they're not going back to the store weekly to drop things off or to return them, and so then they really build up. So I'm wondering how much of the impact is actually fatigue versus people just ordering groceries, because I know most of the people that I'm friends with all order their groceries now. So
I think that's probably a logical assumption, and I think you can also look at the fact that technology and times have changed. The bottle bill was an animal of its time. In the mid-'70s, we had garbage strewn by the road. We now have a mature recycling system where all these items could go into one place instead of these two parallel systems that exist for no reason. I think when you talk about garbage or grocery delivery, you have a 12-pack of Diet Coke delivered and a 24 case of bottled water. You take the Coke back to the retailer, you take the bottled water and put it in your recycling bin. It doesn't make any sense. It'd be so much more convenient just for that person to put everything in that recycling bin.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
In support of the bill, not wishing to speak, Amy Drum, Michigan Retailers Association. In support of the bill, not wishing to speak, Conan Smith, Michigan Environmental Council. In support of the bill, not wishing to speak, Chuck Riegel from Tomra. There being no absent members, there no further business before the committee, we stand adjourned.